Hello, everyone, and welcome to today's panel discussion Cloud Security Best Practices to Protect Data in the Cloud by our panelists Dr. Wendy NG and Satyavati Devadri. I'm Richa, and I'll be your host for the day. Before we get started, I'd like to go over a few house rules. For our attendees, the session will be in listen only mode and will last for an hour, out of which last 10 minutes will be dedicated to Q&A. If you have any questions during the webinar to organizer or panelists, please post your query in the Q&A window. Also, if you face any audio video challenges, please check your internet connections or you may log out and log in again. An important announcement for certificate of attendance. Participant needs to attend the complete webinar to qualify to the certificate of attendance. Participants should fill in the survey form in the attendee thank you email and answer the 3 questions based on the webinar provided with the right answers within the same day. If these 2 criteria are met, then only the participant will receive the certificate of attendance within the 5 to 7 working days. About our panelist, Wendy is the cloud security architect lead and subject matter expert at OneWeb, a communications company leveraging LEO Earth orbit satellites for egalitarian broadband connectivity. She defined the strategy of experienced global DevSecOps transformation initiatives. With a background in infrastructure and cloud security, she is a keynote speaker and a thought leader with over 70 articles published. Wendy honed her technical consulting skills from experiences in several industries, including aerospace, healthcare, financial services, telecommunications, transport logistics, and critical national infrastructure. She started her commercial career as a technical consultant at Cisco before experiences at PwC and Deloitte. She is a trained medical and data scientist with practical experience in statistics, machine learning, and AI algorithms. Wendy completed her doctoral studies at the University of Oxford in medical genetics and has contributed to the scientific community through peer-reviewed publications. To our second panelist, Satyavati Devadri. She has 23 years of experience in banking, telecom, IT, ITES, and media industry, and leadership position at News Corp, Cognizant, Wells Fargo, Capgemini, IBM, and Tata Communication Limited. Satyavati is working as Cyber Risk Cloud CTO at Micro Focus and is also the chairman of the CSA Bangalore chapter and a global advisory board member of CTIA NEC Council. She's a noted speaker in national and international forum. She's a cross-functional enterprise architect in cloud security, cloud operations, application security, network security, identity governance and administration, and data security. She has been awarded in multiple forums for her contribution to the community, including Top 20 Indian Women Influencers in Security 2020 by Security India, CISO Top 100 by CISO Platform, Women in Tech, Chief Mentor by Kamikaze B2B Media, and Top Technologist Tech Beacon Award by W Equity. So without any further delay, I would hand over the session to our panelists. Over to you.
Hi everyone, good morning, good afternoon, or good evening, depending upon from where you dial in. So we are all aware that in the wake of pandemic, businesses are migrating to digital, right? Specifically, businesses are switching to cloud because of the scalability, agility, and cost optimization, right? So no one is actually going to a data center and buying a physical server. Instead, they're buying it on-demand cloud-based services. So with that as a hyperscale growth, Gartner predicts that public cloud spending will exceed 45% of all enterprises IT spending by 2026, and up from less than 15% in 2021 itself. So there's a huge market demand there, right? However, when we are thinking about such a large, huge scale deployment, what we are losing is actually the oversight of the assets, like the infrastructure, which you do not have control on, and the perimeter where it is located, it's not control on. And while we are saying that there are concerns about data security and data privacy, so enterprises are highly motivated to move to cloud and continue to be. However, they do have concerns related to the issues related to security and privacy, right? And also they are worried about the data breaches which are growing at a rapid scale in the last 1 year and more, right? So um, today's session, what we are going to discuss is about what are the different trends of cloud computing, different models, and then how the trend is evolving, and coming back to the issues, concerns, and also the best practices. So that's how we want to concisely cover all the elements related to cloud security in this session. So with that as a context set, I just ask Wendy. Hi, Wendy. So can you just give the audience a little brief of maybe basics of what is cloud computing, how is it benefited, and and also deployment models of cloud in a brief way. Yeah.
Yeah, thank you for that. Thank you for the intro. So in term, you know, when you say cloud, I think it's becoming less so over the last few years. But people, you know, especially public cloud, people kind of go, oh, you know, what is that? It's some spanking new technology. It's not actually really, you know, spanking new technology. It's actually based on very established concepts which are decades old, right? What is cloud computing? It's basically computing on effectively on someone else's data center that you don't manage. So instead of managing your own data center, it's just someone else is managing it. And it's typically multi-tenanted system, because with your own data center, you know, it's probably your organization's assets and resources that's on there. Whereas with public cloud, it's much, you will have different customers who are sort of utilizing the same infrastructure, often the same devices for functionality. So you think, oh God, goodness. So if that's the case, then, you know, firstly it sounds scary, because, you know, you have a lot of data from different organizations in the same assets. Secondly, so what are the benefits? So one of the, you know, a few years back, I think, one of the earlier sort of proponents of cloud adoption is cost optimization. So with a lot of organizations, they bought like infrastructure, they bought servers, they bought networking kit, and they're not utilizing it to, you know, that they should. And it doesn't, which means there's a lot of kind of very expensive specialist assets that's sitting around kind of effectively doing nothing. So with public cloud, what the advantage is that you're only effectively paying for what you need. You're paying for what you use. Now, over the past year with the pandemic, we sort of realized how important it is for us to be flexible, agile, and respond to change. Now, because the public cloud serves a large number of organizations, so they have that sort of investment, they can make those investment decisions easier than, say, for a single organization. They have a much more extensive infrastructure in place. And if you're, you know, in a situation whereby you have, you know, ways of working and your connectivity changes suddenly, your cloud, public cloud is actually much more, is more capable of adjusting to those changes. In terms of these sort of different cloud deployment models, I think in public cloud there are basically three main levels. There's the infrastructure code, so you just have the networking kit, and you're sort of, you know, as the organization, they're responsible for their own patching of their own servers and so on. You have a platform as a service, which means that it moves to the next level of service, so that you don't have to be the vendor, don't have to be responsible, and then ultimately you have the most easy to deploy, for which is SaaS, software as a service. So, you know, that is, for example, Gmail as a software as a service. You know, it's very much plug and play. In terms of deployment time, it's fast. A lot of the kind of management overhead from security, from the operational side of it, is done by the vendor that provides it. you are still, for all those models, it is a shared responsibility model that you're operating on, from security and for ownership. And for all of them, you are responsible for securing your own data. But as you move up the technology stack, you just have fewer operational management overhead. You might be paying for those, but you don't have to have a whole team of people managing those. So that's the different sort of deployment models. So after all that, I am going to hand over to Satya on the, so that she can sort of talk about current trends of digitization and cloud adoption, as well as, why such trends are developing.
Yeah, thanks, Cindy. I think you said it very well, right? So it's all about the shared responsibility model. When you take shared software as a service, right? The SA as a service model, the shared responsibility is close to very limited, but accountability still lies with the enterprise. But majority of the security related activities are owned by CSP itself. Right, when you come to the middle layer of PaaS, you have that moderate, you can say, and then IaaS, it's actually everything you need to take care except for the network layer. So to me, the trend what we are seeing today, the digitization trend and the cloud adoption trend, as we just said, is growing really rapidly, right? Which includes, maybe I'll speak about a few trends, right? One is the data. Data right now, earlier people used to consider, what, this is very critical or this is very sensitive. I think I might need to keep it on premise. That's the way the organization used to think. Now they are thinking in different way. You say, what, if it is so critical, I think it's better be there in a private cloud, but run on maybe a trusted clouds provider, right? So they are moving towards an area where they're looking for a private cloud offering, which is actually managed and run by the cloud service provider itself, right? So it's your data. The data center is on the cloud, right? And the infrastructure is on the cloud. So that is another trend which we are observing. And second observation, what I am seeing is the cloud first, right? Developing applications on the cloud first. Right, when you are developing the applications, don't develop it on on-prem. Instead, develop it on the cloud itself. Right. So the reason why that is so prominent, why people are moving to developing on the cloud first, is because there's a huge, what we can say, infrastructure is needed when you are actually building an application. Once you build it, you need to just drop it. Right. That's a lot of what you can say expenditure which goes into it, which includes the capital expense and which, as you said, right, you buy a lot of system, but you haven't utilized it. So that happens in the development area. So that's why the development is moving to the cloud first technology, and majority of the organizations are moving to the develop on cloud first as a theory. Another one is the another concept which we are observing is the consumer identity management, or we can say, how do you manage the identities over cloud? Why cloud, or why that is more prominent today is because earlier, right? So for example, somebody has to rate a bank. They used to rate because how many ATMs are available, how many branches are available, how much features they are providing, whether they are giving offering tea, coffee, or they are giving this hospitality services in the bank. Based on that, you rate, right? And also maybe the interest levels, etc. Now the trust is built based on how well their mobile panel is, how easy for you to log in, how can you log in easily, how can you do the transaction easily, how secure it is, if there is a tampering or if there is anomaly, are they sending me any notification or not? So these are all digital, right? So what we are looking right now is a digital based experience which actually calls for identity management of that. That's another trend which we are observing. And last one I want to say about the trend is IoT, right? So we are using all this smart things which we are carrying, smart things or internet of things, right? Like your wearables, like watches, smart watches, or smart lights in the house, and then smart houses. You have the utilities, and overall in some countries, or or you can say developed countries, already have their critical infrastructure running on internet, right? So what happens if that critical infrastructure goes into a different hand? And the trend is growing higher and higher, because during the time of pandemic, there are nobody to manage these utilities. So now people are looking into more of the cloud-based adoption, cloud-based services, so that the scalability is easy and easy to handle, right? So those are the trends which I'm observing. I think they are growing. There are more towards it. Another trend I think I haven't mentioned is edge computing. So edge is like one way we are saying all the data is going and ending it on the cloud. And the other side, we are also speaking of the edge. Edge is you have a lot of edge devices, like your mobile, like your Mac device, and your a lot of devices are coming. And each house now, for example, you have 3-member family, then you might have 10 at least devices, right? So where the compute is actually expanding there. So how do you manage that? So that's another trend which we are observing. Yeah. So with that, I think I hope I covered the point you raised, Wendy. But coming back to you, we know the cloud adoption is increasing, but according to you, what do you think are the barriers to adopting cloud?
So I think I sort of held back a little bit. Thank you for that. I held back a little bit when I sort of at the start of the panel on sort of the benefits. Actually, one of the main barriers from sort of looking at from speaking to from both the board level to the infrastructure guys for larger enterprises is security. Their concerns about security, is the right. You are in a multi-tenancy system. You have multiple people who's using the same data center or even same devices to store, process their data. How can you make sure that all of that traffic is separated, and you're not gonna, if one of my, if another organization experience a breach, my data is protected, and we're not going to be kind of interfering with each other's processes and sort of data storage solutions. So I think that was and of course there's it's very traditional kind of this the mindset of owning your own kind of data center. That is my data center, and I have control over what happens in there. And my sort of the fact that I have control, good or bad, is it's good enough for me, right? So I think there's a lot of that kind of concerns about security, concerns about sort of segregating processes and assets from different organizations, and also sort of an element of control, because as we discussed with it, sort of even with any of the deployment models, you're not going to be able to control everything. So you are going to be relying on a third party to make sure that they're doing the right thing. So I think that is a sort of a barrier that I heard a lot from organizations on adopting the cloud. And the thing is, it's the fortunate thing is there's so much data, there's so much education, there's so much knowledge out there. And boards are, one of the things about the pandemic, especially, I think that's accelerated the process a lot, because of this just completely unprecedented situation. Boards are sort of, they're kind of, their mindset basically changed, right? Like, what can we use? Given that we didn't see this coming, what can we use? What can we learn about technology? Technology is clearly very important, as we mentioned about the sort of interconnected devices. We're so reliant on technology. We're so reliant on connectivity to just get on with our normal day-to-day things. And there's fantastic advantages in terms of efficiency and allowing us to do things. We don't have to pop into a branch. We can just do our banking online, for example. They are much more, even at the really senior exec level, they're much more sort of willing to sort of reach out to folks and ask, what can we do? And our perceptions of lack of control and our perceptions of security concerns valid? So I think those were the sort of some of the barriers, but I think we are breaking those down. And one of the things that sort of really helps organizations, at the senior level, they all talk to each other, especially if they're from the same industry. So if they see someone else in the same industry, moving large amount of the assets into the public cloud, they go, oh, it's okay for us. Now, there are specific use cases, from regulatory point of view or for specific industry that you have to keep certain amount of your assets on-prem. But where they can, I think what the trend that we're seeing is where they can, we are really very much breaking down that barrier, which is fantastic. So on that, I'm sorry, it's a bit sort of long-winded, convoluted conversation there. So what are the sort of best practices that you see in the market, and how should an organization move their assets onto the public cloud? What are the migration strategies?
Wonderful, thanks. I think you already covered the best practices to some extent, right? So it seems like the barriers are lowering down now, considering the motivation to go faster. I think everybody knows, right? So whenever you want to run a Ferrari, obviously the braking system need to be tight, right? The controls need to be tight. Then only you can actually accelerate faster. So so now when the organizations are looking into faster acceleration, they are thinking about the braking system, which is security, right? That's how I believe that a lot of people, even though earlier it used to be a scenario where security team has to pitch in and explain and explain and explain. If you don't do this, this will happen. If you don't do this, you will get punishment. If you don't do this, you might need to pay penalties, etc. So that used to be the story we have to tell. Today, as you rightly said, even the leaders are ready to understand and also put in their time as well as their efforts to embed the security as well as the privacy controls into the solutions, which is actually truly evolving, and I'm truly appreciative of that. Right. So thanks for that. So I'm just adding to that barriers aspect. So coming to the best practices, how do you do the acceleration, right? So the best practices to me, I think I'll go in this 3-stage approach, right? So when you are migrating to the cloud and during the migration and after. So coming to the first stage where you are migrating to the cloud, an organization is migrating to the cloud, I think is required to take a base on understanding where they are standing. It's same as how you are transporting your house to a new location or a new city. What do you do actually is you would actually take the inventory first, right? You throw away what is not needed and pack the critical or very important things in a safe bag, and either you carry with you or put it in a double locker, etc. You do that inventory. That's the key thing. And you know what you want to protect, what you want to throw away, how do you secure it, and whether it is a fragile item or whether it is a fragile item or whether it is a iron body, whichever, depending upon that you are doing the protection. I think same applies to the data, right? When you are migrating to the cloud, I think that similar clarity should be there. Otherwise, there is a chance that you might have actually double packed or triple packed the iron box, and the glass items are just thrown out on the top, right? The same applies to a crown jewel kept on the left on the corridor, and the rubbish is actually packed in the 3-layer suitcase, right? So this is possible. Right now, it looks like analogy, but think about this. Data, unless you know which is sensitive, which is critical, you might be applying encryption for everything. Right? That's a costly affair if you don't classify properly. The best thing is to do the discovery, do the classification appropriately, do the labeling appropriately, so that you are using your cost to encryption or packing, whatever you call that, masking. So the cost of control is lowered in that way, right? So discovery becomes your key area. And second is encryption or whatever the mechanisms you are using to do it, whether it is encryption or masking or anonymization, whichever the technology is using, I think you need to do it appropriately to the level what you are needing. You do not need to overdo it. That's one thing, right? Otherwise, it so happens that you are every time opening and locking it for those things, those dresses you need to wear every day, which is a waste of time and money in a regular scenario. Same applies to data. If you are using something that required to be used, then you need to go for some kind of technology which actually allows you to do seamlessly, which might be a format preserving encryption, or which is easier for you to handle it appropriately. While doing so, you need to also ensure that the data is secured while it is at rest, which is when it is in the storage, and while you are transporting, which is actually moving, taking the file from public to your this device, etc., which is your secure SAML encryption, and then also while it is inside, while in the machine, which is in use. When you are actually dealing with sensitive data, even while in use also, it is important. It's called persistent encryption. Mechanisms are available that need to be applied if that's a sensitive data. So those are the three options you need to take care about the data. So coming to identities, I think we spoke about identities a lot earlier. So it's important when we are handling so many devices and so many machines left and right, we observe that thousands and thousands of workstations are being built on cloud, and then there are roles being built, accesses being given. But are you actually able to do an inventory of it? Do you know who have what access? If somebody is leaving, will you be able to remove all the identity, all the roles assigned to that person? Right? What happens in case the person leaves but the identities remain? Right? So all those parts come in now, because we are actually going in piecemeal basis. We are not seeing the big picture view. Right? It's important to have that comprehensive identity management so that you understand the overview, and also can manage the life cycle of the user and ensure that right access is given to all. So that's about the maintenance. But think about the data privacy, right? So when you are giving the data to in the social media, or think like Facebook, I'm giving example, but it could be LinkedIn too. Nowadays, LinkedIn is also not super strong, right? Could also happen in LinkedIn or WhatsApp, wherever. So when there is an information going, right, how are you handling it? How the application is handling it? If you are the organization, how are you securing the personal data? Is there a chance for the person to say that, you know what, I came to your hospital for testing, and I think that data is no more relevant. I am cured now. Just delete that. It's called right to be forgotten. And the organization, which is a medical organization, should have a facility to delete it as per the GDPR rules. So which is actually a privacy law which requires to be handled. So that's another aspect which you need to take in mind, how you are handling it securely. So all these aspects you need to be careful on. I mean, it's not just about the acceleration of the cloud, but also about how you securely handle it, how well you handle the customer, as well as your own data securely, and also handle your identity securely, as well as applications securely. Right. So those are the high-level aspects I can talk about. Wendy, you have any thoughts to add on?
So I absolutely agree on the, it's a fantastic opportunity when you're doing that migration to actually get your house in order, to know what assets you have, because many organizations, especially large organizations, enterprises that has a long, history, operating history, there are things in there that what is that? Do we still need that? So getting that, and absolutely, you cannot secure everything. Your CFO will just like, you won't even you won't be able to have that second opportunity in conversation with the CFO if you just go in and say, oh, I need to secure everything, and here's a number, and here's the cost, and here's what it means by in overhead, and functional operational overhead as well. Rather not just the cost of investing in equipment that can support it. So I absolutely agree. So those things you really want to sort of nail down, and you should be secure enough. I think is one of the things, right? Security is not black and white, so it's not one or nothing, right? You shouldn't do nothing because obviously that can turn. But you can't. There's no way you can protect absolutely everything. And if there's someone who's very, very motivated who wants to get into your system, they will. But what you want to do is protect the majority of those, make it as difficult as possible for an attacker to get into your organization, but you have to do it with an overhead, with an expenditure that is aligned with your industry. I think that is very important. Thank you for that, for emphasizing that point. In terms of best practices, I think maybe if I may turn the conversation slightly on the other side. So from just looking at, you know, cloud migrations, I think the main issues that I've seen from organization is they have this lift and shift, right? It's like, this is our on-prem, you know, that was on this particular server, blah blah blah. We're just shifting it, and we want a whole server for that, and it's very inefficient. You're not making good use of the resources available, and it, you know, you're certainly not optimizing your costs. It's going to be very expensive if you do that, as well as operationally, it might not be the most efficient. For applications as well, some of them, you know, you have to refactor your application so that it is run on a public cloud environment more efficiently. So you need to think about, you know, obviously you can't do everything, and you start with, you know, any new applications, you know, it's going to be cloud native first, and then you progressively move back to applications which you expect to have at least a medium lifetime. You know, short, if it's a short, you know, it's something that's going to be retired soon, it's not worth doing. But it is sort of, you have to look at, you know, the sort of new environment, the new technology changes all the time, so you have to look at it and see, how can I leverage those systems to the best of my advantage? You know, on the security side of it, identity access, don't just have, you know, have it connected to like a mover, leaver, joiner process. Have it connected to security groups, so that when you know, somebody, if you're changing someone's access, you don't have to do it individually, you do it as a group. If somebody moved to a different group, okay, that person's access changed. So you just group things together, use the tools as much as possible, so that you can just lower the overhead for you and the organization, in terms of protecting it, in terms of running it. So I hope I sort of added a bit more to your fantastic introduction, sort of on the sort of best practices there. But yeah, it's I think it's often more involved than people think, but it's worth going on that journey, because the efficiency, cost savings, and operationally you'll be more secure.
Absolutely agree. Absolutely agree. I think one aspect I forgot to mention is about the defense. I think, as you mentioned, right, you can't cover everything. So you can only protect to large extent. That you protect to whatever maximum you can do. After that, you continuously monitor for detecting any threats happening. So it's important to have that continuous monitoring and continuous scan for any anomalies happening, either for the user behavior or from the system behavior, or even to the actually network behavior. So the behavior changes, or we can think about how do you manage these overall security related activities, and are they happening in the railway? I think that's where we land into scenarios like, you know, the terminologies which are coming now, XDR, that advanced threat detection and response. How quickly you detect it, right? I mean, as early as you can detect, I think you can respond as faster. And there are technologies which can actually automate as well, with the cloud being there. So you can have a serverless automation script running. For example, you found some, it's continuously monitoring for any public bucket in S3, which is actually open without having any password or without having anything. Then it could be identified as an anomaly because somebody has created, by the way. But when it happens as an anomaly, you can have a serverless script automatically actually either drop or remove permissions. Think about that. Then actually what you are doing, you are not just continuously monitoring for an issue, but you are detecting an anomaly and you are also fixing it. So having such kind of best practice for not just one environment, but a comprehensive environment, whether it is hybrid or multi-cloud or private cloud, whichever the environment you have, having that continuous monitoring and protection, I think is very important to address that. What you can say, we cannot address everything every time. So that's why you have to have such mechanisms in place. Yep. And over and beyond that, I think there are mechanisms available where you can buy insurance, cyber insurance, and also keep some money for you in case the breach happens. And one thing I think I want to close with is every organization is hackable and every person can be a culprit. either personally, intentionally, unintentionally. So be aware that your organization, don't think that your organization will not be hacked. Every organization can be hacked, right? So that's the concept with which you go, and think that every application is vulnerable, every system is vulnerable, every network is vulnerable, and that's what is zero trust, right? So start there and start working backwards and say fix whatever you can, where you can't fix, find out alternatives. Yeah, I think with that I close. Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Wendy. I think you have given a lot of valuable items there. Back to you, Richa, for Q&A.
Thank you so very much, Wendy and Satya, for an insightful and informative session. It was a very interesting webinar, and I hope it was worth your time. So we begin. Before we begin with the Q&A, I would like to inform all the attendees that this session is in sync with the EC Council Product CND. EC Council CND maps to many roles in the industry like network security engineer, network security administrator, network security analyst, network security architect, network defense technician, security operator, etc. So anyone with the CND certification is eligible for 1,35,000 plus job vacancies globally with an average salary of $85,613 per annum. So if you're interested to know more, kindly take part in the poll that is going to be conducted now and let us know your preferred mode of training and we'll reach out to you. So now our panelists will answer a few questions. So the first question which we have is, what are the best practices of cloud security to accelerate business when migrating to cloud? Can you hear me, Satya, Wendy?
Sorry. Yes,
I'll
I
just
can.
repeat my question. Oh, okay. So do you want me to repeat the question?
Yes, because
Perfect.
unfortunately I'm
Okay.
experiencing a bit of a technical problem because I seem to have got the quick poll as well.
Okay, I'll just repeat it again. What are the best practices of cloud security to accelerate business when migrating to cloud?
The best class, did you say? Sorry.
Best practices of cloud security to accelerate business when migrating to cloud.
Best practices. I think, you know, effectively what Satya and I sort of mentioned slightly early, you look at your assets, you know, you make sure you have your inventory right. You categorize your assets. So you want to make sure that you don't, you know, you don't encrypt everything because of the overhead that's involved. You want to leverage automation where possible for access control, for detection, and also especially for the sort of threat detection. And from the operational side of it, you know, you're just not going to get that many security folks. So you really want to leverage those tools as much as possible to lower your people overhead. I think finally, you know, look at your assets, look at your applications, look at your resources. Do you need to refactor them? Will it help to make your system more efficient and secure? Have a review of that, but potentially that is sort of after the inventory. I'm going to hand it over to you, Satya. Sorry if I missed anything.
Sorry, I think for a moment I was unable to hear. Can you repeat the question again, Richa?
I will repeat it.
Yes, please.
What are the best practices of cloud security to accelerate business when migrating to cloud?
I guess that's the question. I think we answered in the end, but just to speak about, right? So we spoke about the migration. First is doing the proper strategy and planning it, doing the inventory, classifying and applying it, as well as finding what we can say, finding a mechanism in which you can have an oversight of the security and compliance as well as privacy compliance at one place, right? That's most important. As I think earlier we said, we might feel otherwise that we lost the ground, or we lost the what we can say, the visibility of our own assets, unless we have such kind of visibility. So that's the aspect. And as another aspect is, don't overdo it. Have that optimization aspect properly, and apply the controls in a way you're securing your workloads and your applications and your databases, etc. And keep some what we can say, continuous monitoring for application vulnerabilities, and also the identity vulnerabilities and the defense layer itself. So that's the overall stage, overall things to cover.
Thank you, Wendy and Satya. The second question is from Pavan. He's asking, what are the best sources to learn and enhance cloud computing?
What are the best sources to
learn and
learn?
enhance cloud computing?
Okay, so I'm not sure. I think I go vendor neutral, product neutral here. So I myself did AWS cloud security architect certification. Considering the reason why I did is, I just want to have a hands-on and at least one cloud platform, right? So that's the way I did it. It could be Azure for you or GCP for you, to just have that cloud related as well as security related certification. There are certifications available by every provider. That's one. Second is, for going for a cloud neutral certification, there are certifications available by CSA, as well as ISC2, as well as ISACA. Even EC Council has certifications available, right? I think what you need to first of all understand is what are the key things you want to learn, right? You just want to learn the basics, then you could go with the basic certifications on EC Council or CompTIA Plus or CCSK or something like that, which gives you initial certifications, and then you can go into the CCSP or that layer certifications, where it does give you the cloud as well as the professional certifications, right? That's all about certification. But for the learning is concerned, there are a lot of learning available now, thanks to the digitized world. I think there are free information or amount of information available on Cyberera and various other forums which I see. Even the training materials are very low cost nowadays on web. So I recommend you to read more. And by the way, this month is October. Considering this is the National Cybersecurity Awareness Month, a lot of discounts are given for cybersecurity courses. Explore them.
I'm going to quickly, I don't think I have anything to add to that fantastic answer. So, but I think, yes, I encourage you to explore. There are lots of online resources available from a number of different providers, and EC Council, in fact, that you can sort of start your cloud journey or cloud security journey. So there's you know, if you want to learn that, you know, if you're geek and, you know, if you want to learn, or if you're, you know, a more senior exec and just want to find out what's going on in the environment, there's never been a better time in terms of resources.
Thank you, Satya and Wendy. We'll take another question, which is from Ankur. What are the robotics process automation and various tools available for security domain?
Robotic automation tools. Okay, I'll try my best. After that, maybe Wendy, you want to try that, or?
You go first. I can't think of a robotic automation. I can think of automation, and yeah, you have a go, please.
Okay, so see, the point how I am going with the robotic automation is, like, that's the word which we used to use in the beginning. I guess today it's all about IoT or OT, right? So how are you going to do automation for Internet of Things or operating environments like the factories and then utilities, etc. So that is something which is quite a dominating trend right now. So when we are working on with IoT or OT or any other robotic processing, right? You are using some digital digitization already, right? In the previous right? When speaking about pre-COVID or pre-pandemic scenario, there are chances that data being handled by data center. But now the trend is majority of the time, the IoT or OT and backend automation information is handled on the cloud. So there are technologies available on the cloud platforms to feed this data back onto the cloud and send the analytic information down to the IoT or OT systems. So there are bridges available to handle that, right? And in a simple layman's term. Coming to the security, how are you going to secure this, right? There is no way that you can secure such a tiny watch or any IoT device or in general has a very thin firmware where you can't load security elements into it. So there are certain security components are coming in. One is securing the channel itself. How can you securely handle the channel where the data is moving from there? I take an example of automating the instrumentation information for medical healthcare, right? How you can manage that patient health information traveling to cloud and then traveling to the doctor in their home or in their clinic, right? So that securing the tunnel or secure communication is one thing which is being handled right now. And in future, they're also coming up with a thin security, what we can say, encryption or protection mechanisms for the IoT devices as well. As of now, what we see is mainly on the identity, mainly on the secure channel, and the defense, which is continuously monitoring the environment for anomalies. So that's how the automation part, or we can say the IoT OT business security is being handled. Hope I answered your question. Back to you, Indy, if I missed anything.
So, oh no, I think that was perfect. I was just gonna, excuse me. I was just gonna add, I think one of the ways that, for example, excuse me, access control, I think you can automate that process as long as your organization have a system whereby that is possible. So you have security group run sort of, individual access right authorizations. You use single sign-on so that the system can actually do it for you, so you don't have to manually sort of go in for every access and sort of every time that you want to access something, you need to re-enter your credentials. And you don't want to be in a situation whereby once you're authenticated and authorized once, you can have access to a large amount of resources and assets for your organization. So I think leveraging centralize your processes, leveraging the tool so that it can do the things that can be automated for you. I think it's the final thing that I'm going to add to that question.
Thank you, Wendy and Satya, for the information. We'll just take two more questions. The second last question is there any specific framework for cloud security, or does it use NIST framework as well?
Is there any specific framework for cloud security?
Cloud security, or does it use NIST framework as well?
Okay. So there are, so don't think cloud is a different animal, so you need to put a different helmet to it. No, it's actually same workload. Instead of loading in your data center, you are moving into cloud and you are protecting it there. So in case you are using a federal compliant framework, you will continue to use that there. And you will be having additional restrictions of whatever is imposed by federal, right? And NIST or NIST provided framework called Cybersecurity Framework, CSF, which is actually commonly popular for in general security compliance, right? It applies to cloud as well. Another aspect like GDPR, right, which is another regulation for privacy, so which is also applicable for cloud. So think in this way. So whatever the compliance regimes you are applying for a regular traditional cloud, they are applicable on the cloud too. And only thing is, you might need to be more cautious and more careful because it is a shared responsibility, which is a gray area. So you need to be very cautious of what is that gray. and how much is in your control, how much is done by CSP, what is the oversight you are handling. I think that's how you need to trace it, right? Coming to, for example, PCI DSS for if you are handling payment card information, HIPAA in case you are using healthcare information. So these are all not going to change. The compliance regimes, whatever you are doing, have to be applied on the cloud. Hope I answered.
So following on from that and sort of just moving down a level, I think if you're looking for, you know, the NIST and the policies that are sort of high level, if you're looking for specific examples of controls, I think there are a number of organizations, including Cloud Security Alliance, where you can get a sort of controls matrix so that you can get examples. You know, if you just want somewhere to start, you can get examples of controls and measures that you should put in place. I don't know if that's helpful at all.
That's a good point. That's a good point. So if you are looking like that, the frameworks which you could apply to the cloud, right? So the one is the CCM, which is the cloud control matrix, which gives you a long list of controls which are mapped to different set of frameworks which I mentioned, a mapping and what is applicable for what industry, etc. It's a great work done. And another one is a CSA star. Cloud Security Alliance also gives something called star certification for cloud service providers. So you need to check for that whether they already have it. If you are loading your this system or a private data center, you better get that certified by the CSA certification so that the cloud related controls for the data center has been handled. These are additional things apart from the you can say the standard frameworks you can think of. Yeah, thank you, Wendy. I appreciate that.
Thank you.
Thank you, Wendy and Satya again. So, taking the last question, which one is more important, product identity and access information or stored data?
Yeah. I think both are interrelated. What do you say, Wendy?
Depends on your context. Yeah, exactly. I was going to say, depends on your context and what you're trying to. Yeah.
It is context, right? So so depending upon the data, let's say you know, you have the data. Okay, see, as I think Wendy rightly said, it's the context, right? For example, the context is it's my, well, let me take an example, my personal data, which is actually my medical data, let's say, right? I went to hospital and actually I given my test and I got that results, so which is actually very specific to me, correct? So the data itself is sensitive. Whereas I am concerned, it should be known to me and it should be visible to me. I have the complete access to it, right? So that's where the identity part comes in, right? So that should be accessible only to Satya and the doctor, no, nobody else. And if it is going to analytics, it should go in a way that it is not not in a form which could be identifiable back to Satya, right? It is somebody, some random person, some lady who came and did some diagnostic. No way it could be identifiable back to me, right? That is the kind of thing you will be doing in the identity data section. Access is, it should be accessible only to those people who have the rights to access. That's the point, right? You can't actually isolate these two separately. Both are interrelated.
Actually, I think that was a perfect answer. I have nothing more to add to that.
Yeah, you said that already. I'm just expanding on it, Wendy.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you again to our wonderful panelists for answering those questions and for the great presentation, the knowledge shared to the global audiences. It was pleasure to have you both with us, and we're looking forward for more and more sessions with you both. Before we conclude the webinar, we would like you to give a small message to our audiences.
Okay, so I think to conclude, I believe as the acceleration, I think I given this example earlier, but I continue again. So when you are accelerating to cloud, I think it's important to be cautiously identify what data you are loading or what identities you are using and how are you protecting, etc. in a strategic manner and move it. Otherwise, there will be a lot of gray areas. There is something called shadow IT, which is expanding right now. So make sure that all the assets, what you have, whether it is applications or data, identities, or even the work, the systems, all you have visibility on. I think that is more important. Unless you know what you have, you cannot protect. And unless you know what is happening around, you cannot protect. So you need to have continuous visibility and continuous monitoring to make sure that you are protecting your assets as well as your customer assets. Yeah, with that, I give back to you, Wendy. Thank you.
Thank you. So I think for me, I think what just follow on from the answer. I think the fact that you're attending this webinar, right? You are obviously want to educate yourself about what you should do. So there's tremendous amount of resources out there that you can actually access. Use them. They could be free or that it's very cost efficient. Use them. Get a picture of what's happening in the industry. Because technology changes so quickly. So we in the industry, we all have to do it. There will be information about what organizations, or at least as some information about what organizations are doing, and try and align, if it's your industry particularly, align sort of your posture to what organizations are doing in your industry. I think that would help. But education, I think educate yourself, just find out what's out there, what you can do. And I think that's particularly important before you go and speak to the vendors, because you need to have an idea of what you want before before you're sort of like push products, as it were. Sorry, I probably shouldn't say that, but yeah.
No, you're right. You're good, and that's right. Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you again to the both of you. And I also would like to thank all the attendees who have joined the webinar and took out time to take part in the Cyber Talk series and took part in the poll. And with this, we would end the session and you may all disconnect the line. Thank you, Satya and Wendy, for your time. It was wonderful to
Thank
have
you.
you. Looking
Bye-bye.
forward.
Very
Bye.
much.
Thank you. Have a great day. Bye-bye.
Bye.